Hola a todos. Hoy vamos a hablar de un modo especial en el español que se llama el subjuntivo. Y hoy vamos a intentar contestar la pregunta, ¿qué es el subjuntivo? In Spanish, en el español, in Spanish, there are different modes of communication. These modes include the indicative, which is the most common mode, the imperative, and the subjunctive. These modes also exist in English, and we will talk about that in a minute. So the indicative mode, as I said, this is our most common mode. The indicative mode is what we use to express facts. It's what we use to express events, things that are happening, have happened, and will happen, right? The imperative is the mode that we use to give commands. It's the mode that we use to tell other people what to do. The subjunctive is different from these two modes in that the subjunctive cares more about what the subject's reaction to the facts or events or happenings is. So the subjunctive deals more with reactions to or feelings about the facts or events. So that is our subjunctive mode. But that doesn't completely answer what the subjunctive is, okay? So if the indicative talks about what happens and the subjunctive talks about our reaction to what happens, what does that look like, okay? Well, first of all, the indicative appears in a normal sentence, right? So for example, if I were to say, mi mamá compra tortillas. Okay, compra is that indicative mode, right? Compra, it's stating a fact. My mom buys tortillas. It's a fact. It's an event. It's what's happened. If I then am going to react to that, I need to have not just a simple sentence, but a complex sentence. So I am going to say something such as, espero que compre suficientes. So now I have two verbs. I have espero, which is in that indicative that we were just talking about a second ago. I have espero. And then I also have compre. Compre is my subjunctive. And you might notice it's a little bit different from compra, and we will talk about that shortly. So mi mamá compra tortillas, I have the indicative. Espero que compre suficientes, I have the indicative with espero, and the subjunctive with compre, because I'm not talking about the fact that she's buying tortillas now. I'm talking about how I feel about her buying the tortillas. My reaction is, I hope she buys enough. That's our subjunctive. So the subjunctive appears in a subordinate clause. If I take a look at this sentence that I just wrote here below, mamá compra tortillas, that's an entire clause. It's one clause. But if I look at my second sentence down there, I have espero, which is one clause, and then que compre suficientes, which is another clause. So that's a subordinate clause because it depends on my first clause to exist. Basically, all that means is we find the subjunctive as a part of a complex sentence that has more than one verb, right? So I could take this a step further. Maybe I'm the one buying the tortillas. So I could say, mi mamá sugiere que yo compre más tortillas. Maybe we had a conversation. She buys tortillas. I hope she bought enough. She's like, go buy more. So here I have mi mamá sugiere which is my independent clause. Independent, it can stand alone. Mi mamá sugiere. And then I have my subordinate clause, que yo compre más tortillas. And compre, once again, is in my subjunctive tense, whereas sugiere is still in my indicative tense. Okay, here is another one. If I am waiting for people to arrive, I might say, espero que mis amigos lleguen a tiempo. Lleguen is in that subjunctive tense, that subjunctive mode, because I am talking more about my hope that my friends arrive on time. I'm not saying my friends are arriving on time. They might not. I don't know. But what I'm concerned about is how I feel about them arriving. I hope they arrive on time. You might notice, a common word in the subjunctive is the word que. The word que connects my two clauses. So as you can see down here, I have espero que mis amigos lleguen a tiempo. So que is my connecting word between my clauses. And the subjunctive almost always comes after the word que. I say almost always because there are a couple of words and phrases that don't require que, where the que is optional. Que meaning that, and that is often optional in English. But one of the most common phrases where the que is optional is ojalá. Ojalá is a very fun phrase. Ojalá dates back to the Arabic influence in Spain, literally translating into may Allah grant, like may Allah grant your wish. That may Allah grant is kind of an antiquated way to look at it. It's definitely not the way that we translate it now. It's just the literal translation. Today, it's going to translate as I hope or I wish. Okay, I hope or I wish. But it does date back to the Arabic occupation of Spain and the influence that they had on the language at that time. So ojalá is one of those words where we don't necessarily have to have the word que afterwards. So I might say, talking about my friends arriving, I might say, ojalá lleguen pronto. I hope they arrive soon. Ojalá lleguen pronto. Okay, I can say ojalá que lleguen pronto, but ojalá lleguen pronto, ojalá is used with the subjunctive because if I say ojalá, I am expressing how I feel about an event, not just stating the event itself. So ojalá lleguen pronto. As I said, ojalá is very, very common in the subjunctive. So talking a little bit more about the subjuntivo, la pregunta es, the question is, when do I use it? So I'm going to keep repeating this over and over again because it's good practice to put it into your memory. The subjunctive is used to react to an event. Okay? So when we're reacting to an event, we are often giving expressions of feelings. How do we feel about this event? Is it making me happy? Is it making me sad? Is it making me excited? Okay, so expressing feelings. It could be expression of doubt. If I'm expressing doubt about the event, it could be an expression of desire, like I hope that they arrive soon. That's a desire. Or it could be expressing denial or negation. Like, I don't think that's true. It can be used to give a command, to tell somebody what to do. I might say, I want you to do this. That would be a command. You might not do it, though, but it's expressing my desire about the event, not the event itself. Or it could be used to give a hypothetical situation. So when we see the subjunctive being used, it's because of one of these reasons. We will be exploring each of these more in future videos. So let's talk a little bit about the formation. I'm not going to get too deep. I will make another video about formation because it can get a little bit complicated, but I want to talk about just the basics of formation. How is it different from the other tenses, right? So it does have its own formation, but it is very similar to our other tenses. And so for right now, I'm just going to give you some examples using the present tense. So for example, I might say, nieva mucho en las montañas. This is a statement of fact. Nieva mucho. It snows a lot. Nieva mucho en las montañas. Nieva is my verb, right? Nieva mucho en las montañas. If I were to express feelings about that, my personal feeling, because I like snow, is quiero que nieve más. I wish it would snow more, or I want it to snow more. It could be translated in either one of those. Quiero que nieve más. So if I look at this, nieva becomes nieve. My A changed to an E. Nieva mucho, quiero que nieve más. Got my accent on más. Here is another example. I might say, mis estudiantes escriben ensayos. My students write essays. Mis estudiantes escriben ensayos. Okay, so my verb here is escriben. Escribir, to write. Escriben, they write. Ensayos. I have feelings about that, right? So I might say dudo, expressing doubt. Dudo que escriban bien. This is not true. I'm just trying to give an example. Dudo que escriban bien. I doubt that they write well. So you can see here, escriben in my indicative became escriban in my subjunctive. So once again, I'm going with our opposite ending. If my A becomes an E, then my E becomes an A. So escriben ensayos, dudo que escriban bien. There are irregulars. Of course there are irregulars. Why would there not be irregulars? Some common irregulars include any verb that is irregular in the yo form in the present. So for example, I might say, ellos tienen poco tiempo, which is a way to say they don't have a lot of time. Ellos tienen poco tiempo. They have little time. So tienen right here is my verb. But if you know anything about this verb tener, you know it's very irregular in all of its conjugations. So it's probably no surprise that it's slightly irregular then in the subjunctive. So I might say no creo, expressing doubt here. I'm doubting their time. No creo que tengan suficiente tiempo. I don't think that they have enough time. Tengan. So tienen became tengan, which is a little bit more of a change. But if you focus on this end, you'll notice that the E still became an A. See, tienen to tengan. There are very few that don't completely change or don't appear to change. For example, the verb haber, has hablado, if we're talking in the present perfect tense, has hablado con la profe o la profesora. Have you spoken to the professor? Has hablado. So has is the present perfect, el tiempo compuesto del presente. It comes originally, though, from the verb haber. And when I put this into the subjunctive, it is a little bit different, and it's a very common one, so I wanted to bring it up. I might say, ojalá, I hope, or I wish, ojalá hayas hablado con ella. Ojalá hayas hablado con ella. So hayas here is my subjunctive. So this haber is a little bit more uncommon than the others. As you can see, the a didn't change. But for pretty much every other verb, my a in my indicative will change to an e or an e in the subjunctive, and my e in the indicative will change to an a in the subjunctive. I hope that this brief, very brief overview has given you a little bit of an idea as to what the subjunctive is, and I hope to have more videos out soon to explain different instances when we use the subjunctive, as well as how we form the subjunctive in its different tenses. Hasta luego!